Thank you. Welcome to the Audit Committee of Monday, the 19th of April. And I'll ask for apologies of absence. Councillor Julie Amos.
It's the only one I've had, Chair.
No other apologies. I think we're all here then, aren't we? Item 2, any declarations of interest taken into account section A and B. No declarations of interest. Before I start the actual items on the agenda, I've had a request from Audit Wales if we can swap round items 3 and 4. So item 4 becomes 3 and number 3 becomes 4. And the reason I'm doing that is that the officers in attendance today have another meeting to attend to, and I wouldn't want them to keep them in the same order and make them late for the meeting. So everybody's happy with the altered agenda. I now go to item 3, which is the Audit Wales 2021 Audit Plan, Merthyr Tydfil County Borough Council, pages 65 to 80.
Okay, thanks, Chair. I'll take this first, and then I'm going to hand over to Sarah as we progress through the report. So we present to you today our audit plan for 2021, and it sets out details of our programme of audit work to fulfil the Auditor General's duties in 4 areas. So that's the audit of the financial statements, to obtain value for money on the resources it uses, review plans for continuous improvement, and finally, to assess compliance against the Sustainable Development Principle. We're all living and breathing the COVID-19 pandemic still currently, and this is required to work flexibly to consider the workloads of council officers, and this will continue, as will remote working and remote audit for the time being. Our audit of the financial statements work requires us to issue a certificate and report on the financial statements, which includes an opinion on their truth and fair presentation. As in previous years, we will adapt the concept of materiality within our audit work and the reporting thereof later in the year. So we set out in Exhibit 1 a summary of our key financial statements audit risks identified from our planning work, and I'll just run through these quickly as follows. Due to COVID-19 and the resultant pressures on officers, this may impact on their ability to prepare and quality review the financial statements effectively. So we're liaising with officers to mitigate this risk via closed down arrangements and providing support and guidance where required. There are also some other risks arising from the pandemic, and these relate to the correct accounting of income and expenditure and how these are disclosed in the financial statements. For example, the significant number of grant scheme funding that the council has received during the past year. We are again liaising with officers to agree the treatment in accordance with best practice. Thirdly, management override is a risk that is pertinent to all entities, and our work programme plan procedures to mitigate this risk. We've also drawn attention to 2 other areas of audit focus within the report. The first being our review of developments in pension fund accounting relating from the MacLeod judgment, and the second to ensure the correct classification of expenditure and income between headings and the face of the primary statements, and any potential impact this may have on prior reported figures for comparative purposes. So that's a brief summary of the financial statements work we'll undertake this year. I'll now hand over to Sarah, who's going to run through the performance audit work with you.
Okay, thanks, Helen. Good afternoon, everyone. For the purposes of the performance audit work, I'm just really going to draw your attention to Exhibit 2. We'll obviously be taking a flexible approach as Helen has said, but the table there sets out the main areas of our work. So we've recently written to all public bodies who have to comply with the Wellbeing and Future Generations Act, and essentially we'll be incorporating this into all the work that we do. Whilst aspects of the local government measure have been repealed, there is still a duty at the moment in terms of for us to audit the council's publication of their assessment of performance, which they tend to do around autumn time. So we'll sort of need to do that this year. But most of our work will be done under what we call the assurance and risk assessment, and it sets out there are a number of different areas which we'll be looking at. Some of these are consistent across most, if not all, of the 22 councils in Wales. So, for example, we want to maintain an overview of the council's financial position, obviously arrangements on the back of the new legislation, the Local Government Elections Wales Act. We're also looking to do some work on carbon reduction plans at all councils as well. But the main piece of work also will be we'll want to keep an eye on the council's progress in addressing the recommendations in the report that we've recently issued to the council. We're coming along to council this week, in fact, to present that report around. You'll have seen that recently. So that will form, a key part of our work this year. Then we're also going to be doing a thematic review. Again, this will be at all 22 councils, and it's called Springing Forward. So this is really around a resilience type piece of work, particularly on the back of the pandemic, to see, what councils are doing now and how they're going to prepare for the future. So that will be a piece of work that we're probably likely to do later in the autumn. There will be further information setting out exactly what the scope of that work will be, but it will be done at all 22 councils. And then we've got the potential to do more of a kind of local project at the council, and we've been discussing with officers about doing something around the Cyntaf Morgannwg University Health Board footprint and discussing that with the other parties involved in that arrangement too. So that's a possibility at the moment, but again, we can provide some further detail around that. Just want to draw your attention finally then to the fee. So in Exhibit 3, the audit fee, I'm sure you'll be pleased to hear, is staying the same as it was last year, both for the financial audit and the performance audit. The grant certification work has changed slightly, but it's not changing significantly. So the fee roughly is staying the same. And similarly then, just to draw your attention to the audit team. So Helen and I are both staying on the audit as well. I think that's probably, the rest of it is just around the timetable really in terms of when the work will be completed. And certainly, but I'm happy to, I think Helen and I are happy to take any questions if members have got any questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Helen and Sarah Jane. Any questions from members? Can't see any hands up. I've got 2 questions, 2 queries. On page 74, under the heading, you have mentioned it, Sarah Jane, about the local projects, because you indicate it's to discuss with the council the focus of 1 or more local projects. You're not able to give us an indication of what the likely project is with the Cyntaf Morgannwg Health Board, or is that still in detailed discussion on, and what are likely to be any of the other local projects?
Yes, so thank Chair. In terms of the Cyntaf Morgannwg project, what we want to do is scope that with all the different parties involved. So we're currently still working at what some potential options may be on that, but I think it's really important that we have a discussion with the different bodies to agree what that piece of work will be. So as yet, I can't give you anything around that. I'm happy to bring something back to the audit committee when we know a bit more. I think and it was whether there'll be another project. I think, to be honest, it depends on the scope of that project and the depth in which we're going to go into. And I'm also conscious, to be fair, there is quite a lot to cover, or at least keep an eye on in terms of, the council's progress around our recent report, and depends on the action plan that comes out of that. So at the moment, I think it's highly unlikely there'll be another piece of work specifically, but it depends on what the scope of that is. But I'm happy to come back to audit committee to update you on that.
That would be helpful, yes, if you're
Okay.
able to do that.
Yeah.
And the other one really is, I think, is a query on page 78, right on the bottom of the page on the left-hand side. It's under the heading Grants Certification Work. You've got housing benefit, non-domestic rates, and you've got list other schemes.
Apologies, Chair, that's some typographical error there. So the third grant certification we normally undertake is the teachers' pension scheme. So I'll get that amended and reissued.
I thought it might be because you mentioned teachers' pension contributions return under paragraph 27 on page 75. Yeah.
Thanks for spotting that.
That's okay. Just proves I read it.
It does.
Any questions from other members of the committee? No? Oh yes, Councillor Tuvey.
Just out of interest, a brief summary. What was the McLeod judgment? I'd never heard of it, and it seems very important. If it's easy to summarise in a sentence.
Very high level summarised. It was a judgment that will require pension schemes to revise the way they calculate their liabilities. It's hugely more complicated than that, but that is at a high level what it relates to. So we have had a few accounting adjustments in the past couple of years regarding it. So it's just where the legal process has continued to develop and what consequences that has on the resultant accounting of it.
Oh, thanks very much.
Okay.
Okay. Any other questions? Oh, any comments from any members? No. No comments. That's the case. We've completed the report, and you can now both go to your other meeting.
Yeah, thank you, Chair, for bringing it forward. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Take care. Bye.
Bye. Bye. So we now return to the agenda, which we've swapped around item 3 and 4, just to let Bob Williams know as well. There was a request to turn the items round the other way, so I acceded to that request. So now item 4 is the annual risk management progress report and updated corporate risk register 2020-21, and it's a report of the interim chief executive, and it's pages 3 to 64. Who's going to take this report?
I'll take that, Future.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so it's the annual risk management progress report and updated corporate risk register for 2020-21. This is a key element about governance in the authority and satisfies the Wellbeing Future Generations Act 2015 and the Social Economic Duty Equality Act 2010. The risk register identifies the strengths of our commitment to risk, embracing our corporate strategic focus on those issues that are potential to impact on our business. Cabinet and corporate leadership team considered the work before us in the early part of this month to consider the current threat levels. Some of these risks have been adjusted to reflect the work that's been ongoing over the past 18 months. Today, we bring those adjustments to yourselves in audit to see if you agree with the executive and discuss the rationale behind those decisions. We need this all-council perspective on how to move forward in relation to the risks. We've had considerable disruption to our service over the last 12 months. And now, as we move into the recovery stage, we can get back to something resembling normal business. We consider the risk register every quarter. And Chair, I wonder whether you wish me to bring this back quarterly, half-yearly, annually, or perhaps when there is a change on the risk register, we can notify you and then perhaps consider it on an individual basis. But happy for the committee to discuss that and then decide what you want to do with it. At Appendix 1, we have the annual risk management progress report, and Appendix A, we have the updated corporate risk register. For the purpose of clarity, we'll concentrate today on the risks as they appear in the report, because it's quite concise within the report. With your permission, Chair. We've got Matthew Rivers with us today from Business Change to take us through the technical elements of the measurements of the perceived risks and the changes thought to be prudent by the executive. So I'll just take you the recommendations. I'll hand over to Matthew then, if that's all right, Chair. So the recommendations in the report are that the Audit Committee note and debate the content of this report and recommend this report progress to Cabinet for approval. 2.2, Audit Committee notes the continued progress made in considering the risk management requirements for the Wellbeing of Future Generations Act 2015 and socio-economic duty. 2.3, the Audit Committee invites lead corporate management team officers to attend on a rolling programme basis to report on the progress of managing their risks. And 2.4, Audit Committee notes the proposals to continue to present highlight reports on the corporate risk register to Cabinet. If I hand you over the Commission now, Chair, to Matthew, and then he'll take us through the 10 risks as are and the technical aspects of how we've measured them and what we perceive that to be at the moment.
And before we bring Matthew Rivers in, I'll put your point about as to how often we want this report to the committee. I think after we've had the discussions before the recommendations. Okay, thanks. Councillor Chaplin, did you want to say?
Yeah, I wanted a point of order there because we're moving on to the 10 points, but I've got questions to do with the report before that.
Yeah.
Yeah. In 3.3, it says the ultimate responsibility for risk management within the council will rest with all elected members, whilst the cabinet is allocated for the overall responsibility. And I was going on to say, you know, what training is received, but it does mention later on in the report on page 6, the staff and councillors have undertaken refresher training on risk management, and it said via Bob's Business. I'd like to know is how many of the councillors are up to date on Bob's Business, because if we're relying on Bob's Business and some councillors aren't doing the modules, you know, that we're showing that we're ineffective. So are the councillors up to date on Bob's Business, and how many of them have done the risk management element of it?
I think, Chair, we'd have to refer to, I don't think Anne Taylor's here, but she'd probably have an idea on what councillors up to date and where. Unless, Ellis, have you got any idea?
Yeah, sorry, you know, we can certainly get that update. I can't answer it now, but that is quite simple. We can request for that position in terms of how many have currently completed the risk module, and that I can circulate that, or we can get that circulated back via committee if you want, Chair.
Yes,
well,
that's fine.
I'm also concerned, you know, on the element of if we're reliant on Bob's Business for training, and you know, certain members are really diligent on it and some aren't. We need to know that, because you know, if we're reliant on that, and what actions we're taking against members who are not completing their training.
Yeah. Okay. Well, we'll get that information.
Okay, thank you.
Via Ellis. Bob Williams. You're on mute, Bob.
Thank you, Chair. I'm not included in that, and I certainly haven't in the past. I don't know if I would be included, but in order to be meaningful, to ask any questions about the report, it would be useful to see what some of the background data is. So if there's an opportunity to attend one of those, I'd be grateful. And just to reiterate that Bob's Business has nothing to do with me as Bob Williams.
Yes. Yes, exactly. I've got a few questions, and unless anybody else has got any questions on the actual report. Sorry, any questions? No. On the bottom of page 7, right at the bottom there, it says using the corporate risk register and process to assess, we should say, the impacts of the coronavirus pandemic. Has anybody kept a list of the actual impacts of this virus so far? And if so, if there's an up-to-date copy of that, could members have sight of that, if possible?
Hi, Chair, Matthew. We've looked at it from the corporate point of view, as Councillor Barry indicated earlier on, in regards to the likelihood and the impact of coronavirus. In regards to the impact on services with various employees having to shield, or childcare elements of with people being furloughed, etc. But we can have a look at the further in-depth disruption to services, most definitely. I know Paul Lewis from Protection and Safety Services was looking at a recovery element in regards to coronavirus, so I can certainly get an update off Paul in regards to those services that have been disrupted and where we are now in regards to recovery. Chair, that's not a problem for myself. I can do that.
Okay, that would be helpful if that could be circulated to members. And on the risks on page 10, the capacity issues are split up into 2. And on 5 Roman numeral 1, it refers there to the risk that councils lose its staff with high skills and experience and are unable to recruit staff to the required ability to fulfill their role. I noticed that the risk score has been reduced to 12, but both the impact and the likelihood are scored at 4 each. Is that accurate or needs correction?
Sorry, Chair, that should read impact of 4, likelihood of 3.
4, all right. For
yeah,
likelihood.
For that was one of the risks that was discussed when we met in the 1st of April. Capacity was one risk, and then was split into 2. So yeah, sorry, Chair. 5 Roman numeral 1 should be 4 to 4, which is 16 of September, and 4 to 3 as of April 2021. Right.
Thank you for that. And could I ask? Obviously, this has been gone through with a fine-tooth comb because capacity issues have been noted by the Assurance and Improvement Board. Is there any? Can you give me a particular reason why it's then the risk score is reduced to 12?
Matthew, would you like me to assist there? Chair, I can also assist.
Sorry, who's that there?
So it's Fran Donnelly.
Oh, hello, Fran.
I can assist with that if it's of any help to the panel today.
Yeah.
What risk was actually considering was in relation to our voluntary retirements and our retirement schemes. So that would have been capacity in relation to those schemes where we released a large number of staff 2 years ago. Right. So that was the loss of capacity and loss of knowledge with some senior members of the local authority leaving. At the moment, the local authority doesn't have any schemes in place in order to release staff, so we wouldn't lose capacity in relation to voluntary retirements or voluntary redundancies.
Right.
So that's why that has been a reduction in that score, because then that would only look at the loss of capacity in relation to natural staff leaving, so staff actually handing in their notice to leave, or staff that have left through disciplinaries or anything else like that. So that's why that score's actually been reduced. Chair, you're on mute.
Well done. First time this afternoon. 5 Roman numeral 2, when you refer to the the fact that council has many single points of dependency. Fran, for the information of all the members, we surely must know where these are all in the authority. And do you know how many exactly, and clearly the departments?
So the departments have their own identified single points of dependency. What we don't have at the moment is the corporate list in relation to where those single points of dependency are. That's something now that we gather in as part of our focus on the performance data. So we roughly know where they are, but we don't have no concrete evidence recorded at the moment. So that's currently being gathered. That's why it's been raised as in the risk register, as that's a point where our information is lacking at the moment.
Right. So when that work has been completed, could the audit members have a list of all those? I mean, I wouldn't have thought that you know, the majority of elected members would know exactly where we would certainly know some of them, but we wouldn't know. I wouldn't have thought everyone. But if that can supply that information, that would be very helpful.
Okay.
And one last point before I bring in Councillor Salmon, because I know he's got his hand up there. The risk number 7, which is about Brexit. Obviously, Brexit has happened. It's been scored as a risk score of 9, which is quite low. How long do we consider that it's important enough to keep that on the risk register?
Chair, this was discussed again at the meeting that we had on the 1st of April, and the risk was obviously lowered as you say, Brexit has happened, but there's still some very uncertain elements out there in regards to Brexit. So although we've lowered the risk, we felt, or certainly CMT and Cabinet felt, that it was relevant to be kept on there, but obviously reduced now that it's happened. I think Alan Owen, Deputy Chief Executive, has got a comment on that, Chair.
Right. I'll hold you there a moment, Alan. Councillor Salmon's been waiting for some time. Question, Councillor Salmon?
Clive, I won't come in now. Sorry, Chair. I think Bob Williams, Clive Tovey and David Chaplin were before me, so I don't want to come in when it's not my place.
I can't. Right. Okay. Alan?
Yeah, thanks, Chair. Just to add what Matthew said, perhaps the description of that risk needs to change slightly. As you rightly identified, Brexit has happened, but the EU transition process is still in place. So perhaps we can look at the wording of that, Matt.
Yeah. And whilst you're there, Alan and Matthew, it's noted somewhere else in the report that there were monies available to implement Brexit. As a matter of sheer interest, did we apply, and how much money did we get?
Yes, we did apply. It was available last year and also this year, and it was £42,000.
Okay, thank you for that. Councillor Salmon, I can't see anybody else's hand up. No, it's over to you.
Okay, thank you, Chair. I could see the others' hands up. Maybe
yeah,
just
yeah.
my. Just a quick one. It is on 5.2, the capacity. The rest of the council does not have the general capacity to deliver key outcomes, so which you mentioned earlier. Because we're spending over £700,000 now on new staff, and we agreed it in full council. Will that reduce the risk score going forward?
Shall I come in there? That capacity exercise was undertaken in relation to a statutory responsibility that the local authority have. So yes, that exercise has plugged those areas in relation to that capacity. What we're looking at then is version 2 in relation to capacity exercise in relation to the department's actual capacity in order to deliver their services. So it's still an ongoing piece of work, and it ties in with our work in relation to succession planning in relation to the new apprenticeship scheme that we've put in place. But yes, that 700,000 has been allocated in the budget in relation to our completed exercise, capacity exercise, has been factored into that risk score currently.
Chair, can I come in on the back of Fran as well? So just
yeah.
With what Fran is saying. So we debated that point, Councillor Salmon. You know, would it reduce that risk? And we still feel that given the current position of the authority, that it hasn't reduced the risk. I mean, we've got single point of dependency throughout the organisation. Capacity exercise 1 was to really look at making sure that we bolstered those areas in risk of failing the statutory requirement, which we've done. But that's not reduced our dependency on single roles within the organisation. So it's what we're trying to address going forward. And you know, from a restructuring and trying to bolster those key risk areas, we'll continue to do that in a capacity exercise phase 2. But the injection of 700k's worth of capacity hasn't reduced that risk. We didn't feel.
Okay, I think thank you both. I think Fran mentioned earlier that you're going to be going through that process to analyse exactly where those single points of dependency are. Do you have a ballpark figure of how much we'll have to spend to bring that risk score down significantly?
From an honest answer at this moment in time, no, I don't think we do have a ballpark figure. But as we iterate through the process of exploring the next phase of capacity exercise, we will obviously share that with Audit Committee and members from a council perspective as we gather more evidence. Really, I don't think we can take a whole organisation de-risk at the moment, in the fact that we have to step through it section by section and look at each risk, you know, in turn. Really, Declan, to answer your question, I can't give you a figure off the top of my head because we simply don't have it at the moment.
Lovely, thank you, Alice. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, Councillor Chaplin.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Following on from Councillor Salmon, the Welsh Audit Office, in previous reports, has targeted environmental health with concerns that we don't have enough capacity to do our statutory requirements. Has any of the money been spent to fill or plug any gaps there? Has there been any recent recruitment?
Yes, if I can answer that, Chair. Yes, this was one of the areas that was bolstered. In addition, obviously, to additional staff, we've also in the process of transitioning the moving fly tipping back into environmental health. As you may be aware, fly tipping led by an environmental health officer transferred out into neighbourhood services several years ago. So obviously, bringing that back allows us to have even more capacity.
Yeah, thank you, Alan, for that reply. That's my final question.
You're on mute, Chair.
There we are. Matthew, were you going to take us through the risk register?
Yes, certainly. As you can see, in regards to where we are on the 5.8, we've debated some risks, and we had a conversation around some risks already. But just for clarity, where we were in September is on the left there, and where we felt that the risks are at the end of 2021 there. So we got the finance risk has reduced. The budget has been set. So we got an in-year budget. So the discussion on that was to reduce the risk there. The same going forward for 1.2 there. The council is not financially sustainable going forward. That was felt that with the surplus last year, we could evidence that reduction. So we've reduced that from 20 to 15. On the corporate risk too, there was some discussion around the reputation of the council, but on the back of the good work that we've had and the positive comments that we've had in regards to the way we responded to the floods early last year and the COVID-19 impact, the mass testing, that was felt that could be evidence and be reduced as well. The cyber attack, which is risk number 3, was felt to remain at 20 because we simply don't know in regards to where the cyber attack could come from. So that was felt that one would be left as it was. The risk number 4, school attainment, due to the fact that the children are learning from home or learning from other areas apart from the classroom, that was felt that 25 represented, it couldn't be lower due to the fact again of the impact of COVID over the last 12 months. So that was remaining at 25. 5.1 and 5.2 as already discussed there, the capacity risks. So 1 is reduced from 16 to 12 and 2 has remained at 16. Number 6, compliance. We had some discussion around this in regards to, it was originally called, I believe, if you look at it, the last year was governance. So there was an element around governance and how we conduct business as an organisation. But this is more around compliance to meeting statutory deadlines, which we've done. So that was remaining as 16. But just to bring you note to the risk type, there is compliance rather than governance is how we conduct business. Number 7, as Deputy Chief Executive was already mentioned in regards to that. So we'll have a look around the risk type and the description of risk for Brexit and maybe change that to EU transition. So that would be more meaningful for the next meeting. 8, around safeguarding. The discussion around that felt that the risk score was adequate for where we are with safeguarding. The number 9, performance, that remains at 20 because it's overall organisational performance, not departmental performance. So in regards to the RTI plan, identifying education and social services, as well as the environmental and the economic recovery, that was remaining at 20 there, Chair. And then COVID-19 remains at 20 because we're still feeling the impact of that. And I said I'll have a chat with Paul Lewis, head of protection and safety services, and we'll bring back something to the committee in regards to where we are with his recovery plans for COVID for the organisation.
Okay, Matthew, that's it. Members, any questions? Bob.
Thank you, Chair. If the changes come from governance to capacity under 5, you said, where does the risk element that was previously considered under governance, where does that pick itself up? Because if you're changing like 6 to compliance, you're saying is now statutory requirements. It's maybe getting a bit confusing because number 8 under safeguarding takes into account statutory obligations, and so does number 9 under performance. So isn't there some confusion there where you've got elements of statutory requirements in some, you've changed governance to compliance, and the whole basis of assessing one and changing it surely has some impact on the rest of the assessments for all the other risks. That's the first point I'd like to make. And the second one is when you normally conduct a risk assessment, the biggest element of assessment is under the impact and the financial potential for having some bad impact. So whilst I can see certainly under finance, cyber attacks, school attainment, and the rest of them, how would you assess the financial impact? And number 2, the reputation of the council.
So I think you've got 2 questions there.
That's correct. Yeah.
Who's going to take the first question? Answer.
If I come in there, Chair, so I was going to what Matthew was also going to add to this, but the conversation we had was that we felt that it was labelled as the governance risk, but that didn't actually, it wasn't descriptive enough, and it was better described as a compliance risk, given what was within it. So it's not replacing it it was not replacing the risk, Bob, with something else. It was better. It was more descriptive to actually accurately portray the risk we were trying to deal with. So obviously under our changes and transformation and dealing with some of the Wales Audit Office recommendations, we are picking up governance changes within the organisation against the RTI plan. But as a risk description, it wasn't what he was trying to deal with, if you see what I mean. But Matthew may want to add to that.
I can understand that, but when you have a risk, and I think it is a risk, where governance is a failure of corporate management as a whole, and you've had some experience recently of having somebody coming in to look at that, where does that then fit? Are you saying that there is no risk at all, or is there still an element where governance can fail and impact on several other issues?
Anybody going to deal with that point?
I think there's still a risk on the governance, as Mr. Williams has pointed out there. But like Ellis was mentioned, the compliance aspect of it is more around the description of the risk. Organisational, and maybe the governance element may come into risk 9 as within performance as well. So there's still, so we can do more work around it to make it more explicit in regards to where governance is being picked up through the corporate risk register. That's a very good point. It's something that we can look at and maybe bring back to audit committee at a later date, or maybe let's have a look at the risk descriptions and the risk criteria within each of these 10. Maybe there's governance within each of them, to be perfectly honest, through cyber attack and everything else. But there will be an element of risk in all 10. Whether we need to bring risk in as maybe the number 11, as governance as number 11, is something that I can certainly have a conversation with CMT and Cabinet, and we'll understand whether we need to bring 11 in or make the other 10 more explicit in regards to how they deal with governance in their own right.
You happy with that answer, Bob?
Well, I don't want to flog it, Chair, but the point I'm trying to make is that if there isn't this element, or if there is this element and it's either spread across all the other risks, then it changes their scores. And if it's not in all the other risks, then it should be identified separately. So the scoring, and particularly under impacts for each of them, must surely change.
Yeah. I think the point's been taken, Matthew. Okay. Am I right? And that you're going to have a chat discussion with the CMT and then come back at a later stage. Yes?
That's agreeable, Chair, yes.
Yeah. Bob, Councillor Barry, do you want to make a point on this particular aspect?
Yeah, I think Bob makes an excellent point, really. I mean, we get criticised for governance, as many other authorities do, but it's such a wide and varied descriptor that I think we do need to tie it down to exactly what we are talking about. And I think this is a great opportunity for us to go through all those elements of risk and identify exactly what do we consider as governance. Let's get that description right, and let's see where it applies to each of these risks, so that when we talk about governance, we're all on the same page. It's not that all-encompassing statement of governance. What we need is, as Bob alludes to, is we need to understand the specific elements of governance within each of these risks. So you make a great point, Bob. That's all I want to say. Thanks, Chair.
Yeah. No.
Can I, Chair?
Yeah, Ellis has had some IT difficulties trying to get back in with us. Bob, your second question?
The second question was, when you assess impact of any risk, the most important, and usually the one that's highest consideration, is the financial aspects and the financial hit if the risk comes to fruition. And we've had some good examples of that. And I was pleased to hear just now where the likes of the environmental health recruitment campaign is plugging a gap where there was a risk that we were described last year. But under reputation, of risk number 2 seems to figure higher than, for example, school attainment or cyber attack, or God forbid something happens in one of the schools where there's some kind of investigation about children or safeguarding adults. All of that carries a financial risk, but I fail to see under impact at 5 score, the same as some of the others, how that is being affected financially on the council's reputation. Seems to be a higher up. I can understand it being a consequence of a failure of a risk, but I can't see it being a particular risk above the others.
Does anybody want to come back in on that particular?
Yes, it's Kerry here, Kerry Dinham here, head of com. Hi.
Yeah.
The difficulty with that's the reason why the reputation score is always high, is that you never know when your reputation can be tarnished very, very quickly. So you have to make sure that you have resources there to be able to deal with that. Bob, you may recall the programme that we had some years back, Skint, and how damaging that was for the county borough and the council. And we spent a lot of time and money trying to turn that around. So I think that's the reason why the score is always high for reputation.
Does that answer your point, Bob?
Well, I think I'll leave it go. Thank you, Chair.
Okay. I think you've given them the CMT a great deal of food for thought there to come back to us. Any other questions from any members? If not, I've got a few queries. Can I take members to page 28? Make sure I find it myself. On page 28, that's under section 6, 6.2, and the very last sentence on 6.2, it refers there to capacity, supporting the council response to responding to coronavirus. This was picked up in March 2020 with a CMT and cabinet workshop taking place on the 1st of April 21. I just queried myself, is the date March 2020 correct, or should it be March 21? You're on mute, Matthew.
That's the first time for me today. That should be March 2021, Chair, and we had the meeting in April 2021.
Yeah, I thought it was. Obviously, it needs correcting. And can I take it to number 30, page 30, and this again is on the capacity issue. And again, I refer to the third paragraph down under the heading outcomes. It says the second element concerns general capacity and number of spots across the council. I've asked a question earlier on about this, and we're coming back with the information. But does anybody have any idea if we then decide that we have to deal with these spots, how much that's likely to cost? Have we got that far yet?
No, Chair, we haven't actually got that far yet.
Right, Fran, did you want to say anything?
Yeah, I was just going to echo what Alan said. No, we haven't got that far. We're still at the information gathering stage at this moment in time, Chair.
So you're coming back to us, Fran, with the updated information about that.
Yes.
Would you be able to add into that what the likely cost of that is if we had to deal with it and do something about the majority of these spots that we've got?
It's likely to be a significant piece of work, Chair, because there could be a number of strategies in order to deal with those spots. So it could be just about retraining the rest of the team so that that knowledge is shared within the team. It could be that we actually need a succession planning strategy for that service area. So the likelihood is it'll come to you with the data in the first instance, and then we'll need a strategy behind it then in order to how to facilitate those spots within the local authority. So it would only be after we've applied the relevant strategy will we know what the potential costs could be at that point in time. So it'll be a two-stage approach.
Okay, thank you for that. And I see, Ellis, we welcome you back. You had a bit of IT trouble.
Apologies, I had a blue screen at mid Bob what Bob was telling me. So I apologise, Bob. I didn't catch any of what you said from halfway through what your description of the rest. So just to go back to what Fran was saying then, in everything we're trying to do from an organisation perspective, we're trying to make the authority, the council, more sustainable in terms of trying to address like some of the issues the Wales Audit Office have raised. Looking at the way our structure, we structure our services, what we invest in going forward in terms of skill set development, and looking at in terms of numbers of staff in particular roles. So I can't exactly say what that's going to cost, but as Fran said, it's a very difficult thing to put a number on at this moment in time. But the direction of travel, going back to Declan's point and your point, Chair, is to try and de-risk that well, a number of these issues here, but to be able to quantify it right now and say, well, in order to reduce all these spots, we need an investment of X. We can't answer that at this moment in time, because I think it's a bit of a journey we're taking the authority on at the moment. But what we will do is, as subsequent exercises are completed, obviously we'll be sharing that with Council and Audit Committee as we go.
Okay. Bob, I was just going to say, Bob, you had your hand up. That was a legacy hand. You've taken it down.
Can I come back, Chair?
Yeah.
Ellis, I have no problem with that at all, and I understand the importance of it, and it's good to see that there is that thought process taking place to ensure that sort of a quality service is being given. I'm very happy with that. It's just that 2 minutes ago we were talking about changing the definition of governance, which to me is good corporate management overall. And if that corporate management makes a decision, for example, we've just had, to reduce the number of environmental health officers to save money, then the consequence of that could be something happening for which the council would have to pay out if it's sued when something goes wrong. Whereas with the performance, with the reputation of the council, that isn't a necessary expenditure immediately. It's a consequence of what might happen if the risk fails. And I have no problem with saying that is a risk because there's an expenditure, but I cannot see why it should be an automatic acknowledgement that there will be a financial cost and therefore it's a big risk. The others, in my opinion, rank higher than that because it's a consequence, not a direct risk. And it's a strategic risk, which under the terms of these definitions, the strategic risk to me is the corporate risk. It's a corporate decision, governance, and then you come back full circle. So just changing that one, and certainly the definition of the other, is bound to have an impact on the impact of all the others and change potentially the ranking. Obviously, straight away, finance, top of the pops, no argument, because you have to balance the books. That's a statutory requirement. And there are other statutory requirements which could be incorporated in each of the subsequent risks, as has been identified in number 8 and 9. But good governance is overall corporate management, and that's a strategic issue, and decisions made at a strategic level will potentially have a bigger cost consequence if the risk fails. So I've no argument with what you're saying. It's good to hear, Ellis. So I'll leave it at that, Chair, I think.
Okay, thank you for that. If I can take you to page 51, and it's also on 52. Top of the page there, if you go across it, under the heading, have you applied the 5 ways of working when considering further actions? The first one there refers to review our current performance management procedures together with focus groups with a view to relaunching in 2018. Is this something that needs to be taken out of there? Because we're talking about something that we were looking at to do in 2018. And on page 52, it's also in the same part there, under the same column. So can somebody clarify that needs to be kept in or taken out?
I'll review that, Chair, and take that out ready for the update for Cabinet next month. I can take that out. I'll review it, and if it needs to come out, then I can take it out. Okay,
thank you. And if I can take it to 56, page 56, 57. If you look at 56, I'm sure I got the right one. Yes, page 56, if you go right across to where it says lead corporate management team officer, lead councillor, it's got Councillor David Hughes there. That's not correct, is it?
Chair, it looks as if there's an out-of-date version being attached from my perspective. There's clearly some continuity errors there, so they need to be updated. Apologies.
Yeah, I'm conscious, Ellis, that we need an up-to-date copy in front of us. You know, the other bodies will be looking at this, so we need to make sure that we get it right. Are there any other questions? No, if not, any comments from anyone? Yes, Councillor Salmon.
Thank you, Chair. Just a couple of quick points. A lot of the risks mentioned in the report today, namely finance, school attainment, capacity, compliance, safeguard and performance, will have a lot to do with funding. I think that there needs to be a rethink from Welsh Government on how councils are funded in future, because I don't think we're the only one that have been said to be in trouble, to be honest, because you've got Cardiff, their forecast midterm financial plan is a deficit of about circa 20 million, Blaenau Gwent 3 million, and Bridgend 5 million. So something needs to change. But my next point is it's a well done, to be honest. It's on the risk number one, the council does not balance the budget in year, and the council is not financially sustainable going forward. From last year to this year, you know, there's a big change in that report. You know, it's and you've got it. Bob mentioned about governance, but you've got to say that the governance has got to be good. You know, getting there, to be honest. And you've got to give credit to Andrew Barry, Kevin O'Neill, Lisa Mitten, Ellis Cooper, Alan Owen, and the rest of the corporate management team, to be honest, because things are looking a lot better than what was said by the Welsh Audit Office, to be honest. And I don't think things are, in my opinion, are as bad as they made out. I think there's a lot of other councils that are that have got their own issues.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Salmon. Anybody else who wants to make a comment? No. And Councillor Barry, thank you for your attendance today. I understand that in the chat you have to leave us. If there are no other comments, I will take this progress report to a vote in a minute. But Councillor Barry did ask us at the very beginning as to how often we want to have this report. Is it every quarter or 6 months or so? In view of the discussion, and there are a number of points which you're going to go away and discuss, Matthew, with the CMT, I think it might be helpful to us if you come back to us in 3 months' time from now, so that we can keep tabs on it, and then we might decide that in 3 months that it might be perhaps, less frequent, bring it to us. Yes, Councillor Barry?
I think that's a good suggestion, Chair, to be fair, because by the time we bring the report back in the next corner, we'd have outturned our finances for the year 2020-21. So we'll be a lot clearer in terms of if that journey of improvement is to continue, then we'll be a lot clearer on the finances in June. And as Bob brought up some really interesting points there, I think we'll go away, we'll review that math and look at how we can identify those strategic elements of governance within each of the risks. I think that's a great suggestion. So I think that's great. We'll bring that back next quarter because there's going to be a considerable change by then, hopefully. So thank you, Chair.
Okay, yeah, that's fine. Right. Bob, did you want to? Is there a comment?
Yes, just one comment, Chair. I'm obviously not an elected member. I have no axe to grind one way or the other, but I do have a fair bit of experience in risk management, and some of it in far more complex issues and detail. So, if Matthew or any of the officers would like some comments, if they want a little bit of input, I'd be happy to do that for them.
That's great, Bob. Thank you for your suggestions. I'm sure they'd be very wise to talk to you. Thank you for that. Now I'll take this. I need a mover and a seconder to the report that's before us. Can somebody move?
I'll move it, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Davis. Is there a seconder?
Yeah, I'll second it, Chair.
That's fine. Right. As I said, I'll deal with the voting as we deal with in council. Bob, if you could take your hand down, please. That's it. That's fine. Any abstentions? None. Anyone voting against? There's none. Anyone voting for? And that is unanimous. Thank you very much. If you can all take your hands down now, please, including my own. Right. The next item on the agenda is item 5, and that's the Internal Audit Charter 2021 to 2022, and it's pages 81 to 104. Mark, you're going to take us through this report?
Yes, thank you, Chair. Good afternoon, all. Yeah, the title of this item is Regional Internal Audit Service Charter for 21-22, and the purpose of the report is to present to members the charter for this financial year. You'll see there's section 3 on page 81 of the report, the introduction and background. The charter is a form document that defines the purpose, authority and responsibility of internal audit activities. The charter establishes internal audit's position within the organisation, authorises access to records, personnel, physical properties relevant to the performance of engagements, and defines the scope of internal audit activities. The purpose of the Charter is to define the purpose, authority and responsibilities of the Regional Internal Audit Service across Bridgend, Merthyr Tydfil, Rhondda and Taff and the Vale of Glamorgan councils, and it's a lot more detail then in the subsequent paragraphs. 3.7, the Charter is split into the following sections: purpose, authority and responsibility, independence and objectivity, proficiency and due professional care, quality assurance and improvement programme. And the Charter also has 2 annexes containing a glossary of terms and the Code of Ethics. And the role of the Audit Committee in relation to internal audit is to oversee its independence, objectivity, performance and professionalism, to support the effectiveness of the internal audit process and promote the effective use of internal audit within the assurance framework. And one of the key roles which demonstrate the Audit Committee's oversight is the approval of the Internal Audit Charter. In section 4 then, I just wanted to refer you to 4.2. The Regional Internal Audit Service Charter for 2021 is attached at Appendix A. The charter was fully reviewed and amended for 2021 to have a consistent charter for the 4 councils, which is consistent with the objectives of the regional service, that is to eliminate duplication and apply best practice. We've reviewed it again for 21 and 21-22 to ensure it continues to reflect the requirements of the public sector internal audit standards and is applicable to all 4 councils involved in the shared service. So having done that, the only changes that we've made for this year relate to the change of title of the audit committee across all 4 authorities to become the Governance and Audit Committee during 2021 as a result of the Local Government and Elections Wales Act. So we've updated the terminology in the charter pending the change of title, and I think that's planned to take place from the date of the AGM when the constitution will be updated for Merthyr Tydfil. So then we'll be able to use that the new title from that point on. But as I referred to, there's quite a bit of detail in the document in Appendix A, but happy to take any questions. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Mark. Any members, any questions? No. Any comments from any member? No. Bob.
Thank you, Chair. I suppose perhaps my my comment is as much to you, Chair, as it is to Mark. With the change in title, does it widen the scope of the remit of the committee in any sense?
Well, I can answer that because under the Local Government New Act, it's quite implicit in there. I think I'm right in saying that somewhere in the region of about 1/3 of the membership, Mark, have to be lay members, and the chair in over a year's time should be a lay member. I am right, Mark?
Yes, that's right, Chair. That's what will be coming in from May 2022. The number of lay members will increase to 1/3 of the membership of the committee, and the chair, it'll be a requirement that the chair is also the lay member. So that's coming in from May 2022. The elements that are coming in from now basically are the change of name for the committee, as I mentioned, to become the Governance and Audit Committee. There'll be a requirement for the Governance and Audit Committee then to look at certain aspects of performance. There's some specific elements linked to that in terms of reviewing an annual self-assessment report and linked to the change in the performance regime across Wales. There'll be a requirement to feed into when a panel is appointed on I think it's one electoral cycle basis to review a local authority, that the Governance and Audit Committee will feed into that. So there's a specific requirements linked to performance that'll come in partly during this year, but also in subsequent years. And there's also another one then linked to reviewing the way the authorities dealt with complaints, formal complaints. So there's 2 specific aspects linked to that: reviewing how how complaints have been dealt with, but also forming a view that if the authority has the capacity to actually deal with complaints. So there's some specific things that have been introduced. So in common with every other authority, the legislation is changing from now, and everybody's working out when certain things will need to come in front of the committee. So there's some bit of discussion going on that at the moment, because there's been some guidance from Welsh Government, but not a lot of detail. So as things develop, we'll be updating members. I think what will need to happen is once Council agrees the update to the terms of reference, that the committee gets that information and an update on those specific aspects, so you are brought up to speed in terms of elaborate on what I've just said. But that's it in broad terms, the requirements coming forward.
Okay, thank you, Chair.
Okay, thank you. Any other comments from any members? If not, could you take a hand down, Bob, please? Thank you. If there's no other comments, can I take it back to the recommendations in relation to the Internal Audit Service Charter 21-22 under 2.1, that members consider and approve the Regional Internal Audit Service Charter for 21-22. Could I have a mover, please?
I'll move it, Chair.
Thank you. And a seconder?
Oh, I'll second it. Second it then.
Thank you, Councillor Tivy. It's been moved and seconded. I'll now take it to the vote in exactly the same manner as we've done earlier on. Are there any members who wish to abstain? Are there any members who wish to vote against? And members who wish to vote for? And that's unanimous. Thank you all very much. If we could all take our hands down now, please. Thank you. Councillor, that's it. Thank you. The next item is item 6, and that's information reports. Did you want to say anything about the information reports, Mark?
If I could just make a few comments and also mention some others that'll be coming up in the near future as well, if that's okay, Chair.
Yeah, fine.
The two referred to in this item 6 is the Treasury Management Report, where we've given a good opinion and made 2 recommendations. And very pleasingly, the service, the accountancy department implemented the 2 recommendations before we'd issued the final report even. So to be fair to them, they've taken on board the couple of recommendations, but there's good controls in place in relation to Treasury management, which is good news, really. In relation to Force of Fran, that wasn't a full report. It was just really just understanding the current situation, because there have been various issues from a legal perspective going on for a little while. So it was a follow-up on a piece of work that we'd done a few years ago, and just to establish the current position. So the only recommendation was linked to for the legal department to continue with the course of action it's already undertaken in relation to considering any appropriate legal avenues in relation to ensuring that the sufficient information is forthcoming to enable the council to do what it needs to do to secure the payments that it's entitled to, really. So it was just confirmation that the council needs to continue doing what it's already got in hand. So so that was just by way of update. The only other thing to mention, we've got a number of reports that have been issued in draft or in the process of being issued in draft, so they'll be forthcoming at a future audit committee. Just to mention safeguarding, cash income and creditor payments. But the other one I wanted to mention, it's only been issued today, is a draft report on risk management. We've reviewed risk management arrangements across all 4 councils, because as Councillor Barry said on the previous item, is a really important aspect of governance that you've got sound risk management arrangements in place. So it's only been issued today in draft, but one of the recommendations in that report was for the council to consider the frequency with which risk management information comes back to audit committee, which you've already started to discuss and debate. This year has been a difficult year, obviously, because of COVID and resources being stretched to support the response to COVID. But I think, as you've already acknowledged, I think it would certainly be helpful for updates to come back to audit committee on a more frequent basis. And one of the things, it was one of the recommendations in the previous report, is that senior officers actually give a bit more detail on a periodic basis on where they are on specific risks. But I think it would also be helpful if Councillor Barry and the appropriate officers are able to come on a periodic basis as well, to give that sort of wider overview. And I think some of the comments that Mr. Williams has put forward are helpful. And likewise, I've got a long experience of managing risk in previous years, and more than happy to feed into that process if anybody would like that benefit of experience as well. And also in terms of what happens elsewhere, it's always useful to get that perspective as well. So that's all I wanted to say, but happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Mark, and thank you for your offer of assistance with the risk management situation. I think that would be helpful as well to officers. Any questions from members? Any comments? No. If not, can I thank you, Mark? This is for information, actually, isn't it? For on it, so I don't need to. I'm not going to take a vote on that. No. Can I thank you for your input, Mark? I go on to the next item. That's the reflection evaluation of the meeting. I think we've had a very interesting meeting this afternoon. I think the whole debate on the risk management progress report was very interesting, and I'm sure all members will look forward to a further report on that at our, well, I haven't got the date in front of me, but I'm sure in 3 months' time we'll have that report before us. And item 8, any other business deemed urgent by the chair? I've had none. Can I thank everyone for their attendance today, both elected members and officers? And I hope to see you all at the next audit committee or governance and audit committee next time round. Thank you all very much.
Thank you, Chair.